They want to continue to try to control and manipulate dollars to get this economy rolling. They've dug such a deep hole of debt that you're never going to get out, and you cannot continue to kick the can down the road. You have no more jobs to create. We don't have the Industrial Revolution anymore, and we are going to be stuck until the youth grow up.
Again, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Silver Bullion Television, SBTV. I'm your host, Patrick Vieira, part of the outreach team of Silver Bullion here in Singapore, where we want to help you truly secure your wealth. Todd Bubba Horwitz joins us today. Todd brings 4 decades of experience in trading, 15 years of teaching and sharing option strategies, and an exceptional track record and consistent success in navigating the markets. And Todd is the chief marketing strategist as well as the founder of Bubba Trading. And we're delighted to have Todd as a first-time guest on SBTV. It's time to saddle up and silver up for Todd Bubba Horwitz. Todd, welcome to SBTV. How are you doing?
Pat, it's great to be with you. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I've heard much of your stuff, and I think it's great. So it's great to be here with you, Patrick.
I'm glad to have you. I appreciate the kind words, and I'm really thrilled that you're here. I want to, again, thank you for being here, and I'm looking forward to your no-nonsense, hard and honest style. And having said that, got to ask you, what's your assessment on the concern for oil prices rising with Middle East tensions?
Well, I think it's a natural thing to look at, but I think it's kind of stupid. I mean, again, we are producing more oil than ever now, but the problem is that we're shipping our oil to China and other places around the world and not taking care of the American citizen. Well, we get screwed by OPEC and Saudi Arabia because the president and those people have a percentage basis that they're taking money and taking deals based on it. There's no reason for us not to use the oil ourselves. Why are we shipping out of this country? Let everybody else buy from OPEC. We don't have to buy from OPEC. We have enough oil in this country at current usage for 300 years without going into the environmental areas where they want to call safe.
I mean, are consumers going to feel it at let's say the fuel pump should oil prices rise, or do you expect the current administration to once again dip into the strategic petroleum reserves?
Well, it's hard to dip into the reserve when you've only got a 14-day supply left in there. There ain't much left. They have destroyed this. They have put the United States at very much danger because the strategic petroleum reserve is for wartime oil. Okay. Should something happen, we might not have enough oil. Again, I go back to why are we exporting our own oil, not filling our strategic petroleum reserve, and taking care of the American people? The cost of gasoline is not only does it affect your driving, but it affects the goods that get to your stores because in this country, 80% of the economy is based on fossil fuels. So when prices are higher, it costs more to ship it to the store. It costs more to make it. You know, nobody realizes that all those water bottles that we're saving the environment with, those are made with fossil fuels. Plastics, vinyl, everything is made with fossil fuel. And if you continue to destroy yourself and ship it to China, all you're doing is giving it away. So instead of us paying $30 a barrel, we're paying right now $73 a barrel, and it doesn't make any sense. What I would call is stupid.
I think we're at a pretty critical decision that we're going to have to make. I mean, are we going to give people lower prices, or considering geopolitical tensions going on, are we going to keep some of that oil for ourselves instead of shipping it out, as you're saying?
Well, I don't think so. Listen, number one, we have a world that's trying to get globalization. Okay. They are trying to turn the United States into either a communist country or a socialist country, but neither is good. They are trying to destroy capitalism. And of course, I want to tie this into the rate cut that we had 2 weeks ago. Realize this, everybody who's watching this, interest rates have gone up every day since the Fed cut rates because the rate cut is not for the average person. The rate cut is for the banks. The banks borrow from the Federal Reserve and they work on a spread when they're lending. So all they did is give the banks a bunch of money, which is going to create much more inflation. And when they create more inflation, we get taxed. It's called the hidden tax of inflation because everything you buy at every store, at every gas station, wherever you go, there is a federal tax on it. So the federal government can't raise your taxes. But if they raise inflation, which they've been telling us they're trying to cut, which is all BS anyways, If they get inflation higher, they get more tax dollars from you.
The banking system, we recently saw small and regional banks go down or be absorbed by bigger banks. We saw stalwarts such as Credit Suisse go down. We still had a Silicon Valley Bank, that event last year. Are the banks still in a bit of trouble? Because we also had the Fed or the Treasury basically say we're going to save some of them, but not all of them. So, in your opinion, what's the state of the banking health?
Well, we get lied to every quarter when they do that ridiculous stress test. Okay. They don't do a real stress test. They don't really check the bank's assets. And of course, the banks are, in my opinion, are in big trouble. We know for a fact that 1,200 regional banks have claimed that they're in trouble. So you don't think that the bigger banks in trouble? They are over leveraged. And there's a little gimmick. When the bank borrows money from the Federal Reserve, okay, they take that money that they borrow and they can flip it around from a liability to an asset, which then allows them to lend out 10 times that amount back to the consumer. So they're actually creating money as well, and we're seeing a destruction of the currency because the fiat currency system is manipulated and criminal by the cartels anyways. And I'm talking, when I say cartel, that's the Federal Reserve and the central banking system around the globe, because they are all stealing from their people, and this has been going on since the 1600s in England.
Speaking of the Fed, we're seeing the balance sheet go down. It's getting close to 7 trillion now, moving off from almost 9 trillion. But the opposite is happening, where we are seeing the money supply growing once again. Not a rocket scientist here, but is it a cause of inflation? Too much money chasing too few goods, and we have a central bank in the business of money creation once again, potentially reigniting inflation.
Oh, again, that is the plan to get this to be a socialist or a communist country. They flood the system with money, making your dollars worth less. Okay, so this is what you have going on right now. This is a much bigger problem, and of course, most people don't recognize it. And if they're okay, they don't care. Okay, because it's the old story. We're in a recession as far as I'm concerned, but a recession is when your neighbor lost his job. A depression is when you lost your job. And jobs here stink. They're not making enough money. We know right now from the PCE that we are spending more every month than we're making. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that you keep doing that, you're going to be broke pretty soon.
With the jobs, a recent number came out where there were more jobs that were created, more than expected, some 254,000, I think. But in your view, are these, say, quality jobs, or are these numbers even true?
Can I call it whatever you want to call it? Is that okay with you?
Call it as you see it.
Bullshit. It's bullshit. Okay. First of all, people have a problem. They like to look at the headline number, but then next month, I will bet anybody any amount of money that this number will be revised lower. Okay. We already know that people aren't working. We already see the amount of layoffs at major corporations. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people get laid off. So where did these jobs get created? And of course, let's go back to 2021. Since 2021, 66% of the jobs that have been created have gone to illegal aliens or illegal immigrants. Okay. 33% to Americans. 50% of the 33% has gone to government jobs. We don't need more government jobs. We need the government to quit spending money on worthless crap, spending money in Ukraine, spending money everywhere else but in this country. Do you see the amount of homeless we have in this country? This is a disaster that has been created by government over the years, but really accelerated through the Biden-Harris administration, because they're allowing illegals to flow in. And if you just notice, FEMA is out of money. Why? Because all that money went to illegal immigration to support those people and give them benefits, which they have no business being here. So why are they entitled to benefits?
I want to get back to the Fed, though. Are these guys doing the right thing by cutting rates now? And I'm asking this because a lot of people we've had on the show say the Fed should be raising rates, not cutting rates.
They should be. The Fed, listen, it's amazing because I thought Jerome Powell, when he was first appointed, was a good choice because he came out of our industry and I thought he understood the free market. But I guess when you go into the glass tower of the Federal Reserve, you could become a moron, because cutting rates here can only create inflation. Okay. And one thing we know for sure, Patrick, the free market will tell you what something is worth. You want to know what interest rates should be? All you have to do is look at what is the average consumer paying if they're borrowing money. Mortgage rates are up again. Mortgage rates in Nevada are 8%. Okay. And of course, if you look at some of the peer-to-peer lenders, okay, they're getting 12, 13, 14, 15%. And of course, credit card interest is 25%. So if you let the free market decide what the interest rate would be, it would probably be 7 or 8% at the Fed rate. But they want to continue to try to control and manipulate dollars to get this economy rolling because they've dug such a deep hole of debt that you're never going to get out, and you cannot continue to kick the can down the road because you have no more jobs to create. Remember, this is we don't have the industrial revolution anymore, and we are going to be stuck until the youth grow up because those are the ones who understand all this technology. People that are, let's say, 50 and over, they couldn't write code is for the most part. I mean, there's a few, I'm sure, but in general, most are not capable of keeping up with the industry. So if they have to get a job, they're going to have to get some crappy service job or go to Walmart and make 12 or 13 or $14 an hour.
Yeah, I hear you. I see our IT guys at work coding things, and those letters are way too small. Us old guys, we can't see them, so we're we're definitely not going to be able
Yeah, I
to
can't see
to
them. I
do
don't
coding.
understand them.
Same, but yeah, I want to get back to the Fed and Jerome Powell. Some people say he's done a great job and engineered a soft landing. What's your assessment on this? Because I heard you say we're in a recession, but people say we're avoiding the recession. They say even a stagflation. These things could be off the table now, according to some.
Well, according to idiots, yeah, it is off the table. But again, all you gotta do is look around and see what's going on. I mean, you look at Olive Garden, for example, the Darden restaurant chain, one of their restaurants. Their CEO came out and said their customers are no longer the $100,000 a year and below. They don't come in anymore because they can't afford it. Look at McDonald's. I just went to McDonald's last Saturday night. We stopped for a hamburger. The hamburger was about 25% of the size, below size than it was in the past. Okay, they're trying to keep prices, but they can't keep prices down. We're going to have runaway inflation. Okay, there is a chance for stagflation. We are creating a mess in this country because inflation is not at 2%. Who do they think they're kidding? Their garbage CPI number of 3.1%. What does that include? Well, it only includes 4% of food and energy. Now, if you don't have an emergency and don't have to make a major purchase, what do you spend most of your money on? Food and energy. So again, it's a foolish game that people fall for what they read in the paper because most people look and go, well, I can pay my bills. Maybe it's a little tighter, but I'm living, so it's okay. And the government says that everything's okay. But we know that the government is not okay. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, both sides are taking advantage of the people. Okay. And if you look at the Constitution, government should be run city, county, state. The federal government was never intended to be the largest employer in the world. Okay, they were only supposed to oversee, not employ more people than anybody else. So Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve, the government has not engineered anything but a pain and a lot of pain for Americans because we are in a recession, no matter what the moronic economists out there who keep saying. But of course, we know that the economists don't tell us until 10 years later. And they say, oh, well, in 2024, you were in a recession. Well, I want to know now, but I do know now because I can see it from the people and how their spending habits and where they're going.
Yeah, completely agree with that. Also, you touched on the immigration situation. I gotta ask, how is it that the government has moved to taking care of, let's say, non-citizens more than citizens when it comes to housing, financial aid, allowing some laws to be broken? Nothing against the immigrants, because the wonder here is how does the government not take care of its own when it is putting future generations of its own into unpayable debt?
Well, let's be clear about this. This is not the government. This is the Democratic Party that is in power now, that is facilitating this. So this is now a political issue. They are buying votes because they're going to let them. They want to let them vote as well. And if you're coming in as an illegal immigrant, okay, and you're getting paid off by the Democratic Party with all these benefits, who are you going to vote for? This is a tragedy what's going on here. The amount of illegals are letting in here, the amount of criminals are letting in here, and nobody's talking about the 35,000 Chinese that have come in illegally into this country. Now, what are they doing here? We know that China wants to take over the world anyways. Are they trying to sabotage some of America? I mean, again, we've got a lot of things going on here, and illegal immigration is illegal. They should not be allowed in. There should be a wall on the borders. We got to do a better job because my great grandparents came in through Ellis Island like many people did, and they came in legally and became citizens. Okay, but you cannot have these illegals, especially when a lot of them are criminals. And Vice President Harris has proven from her term in San Francisco as Attorney General to her term as Vice President that she lets the criminals go. You can't do that.
Yeah, that's a great point because I'm in Singapore right now, U.S. citizen in Singapore. This immigration issue would never ever happen. So I'm wondering how is this happening in the U.S. where the borders are just non-existent?
Well, Joe Biden didn't want to finish the wall, and Kamala Harris, the borders are wants they want him in. Again, when you're trying to change the way a country operates, and you're trying to destroy capitalism, one of the ways you do it is you let people in, and you let them come in, and you give them money, okay, and you force it into a socialism type of system or a communism system. I've often said that someday, if they continue, this will be the CCP of the USA. Okay, because we are becoming communist, Marxist, socialist. We should be capitalist because the only way that a true economy works is through capitalism. That gives you true price discovery. That gives you what real prices and what things are really worth, and it does not devalue your currency as the government continues to do. It's a tragedy, and it is more like treason in this country.
You mentioned those different types of governments. I want to ask you though, because from what I'm seeing also here, U.S. government seems to quickly becoming a noticeable oligarchy. Do you see the same with that?
Exactly. That's the first start of communism, right? And who are the number one supporters that are out all the time for Kamala Harris? All of the very wealthy. You don't see the poor people running out supporting Kamala Harris, but if you're wealthy, if you're among the upper 2%, you want socialism or communism because it doesn't hurt you. It actually benefits you of a person with wealth because you can accumulate more assets while the poor people that can't even eat are starving and they're feeding you. They destroyed free markets here. They destroyed small business. I mean, just look at the destruction across the board. And when Google and Meta come to the government and said, please regulate us, put regulations on us, and what are they really saying? They're saying, we don't want to have any competition. Okay. We want to destroy the competition before they get started because they can't pay. They can't pay all the fees that we paid to get here. So all of a sudden, you've got big companies. And if you don't understand this, people, the bottom line is if you keep destroying small business, you're going to be paying a lot more price at Walmart and you're going to be paying a lot more on Amazon because they're going to be allowed to raise their prices because there'll be nobody competing against them.
With all these things that the rest of us from outside the U.S. are seeing going on within the U.S., you think these things are surely going to cause more de-dollarization, where it's not even necessarily the weaponization of the dollar, but the failing of the country that people will just not want to hold that dollar.
Well, look, right now, until further notice, the dollar is still the reserve currency. As worthless as it is, it's a worthless piece of paper. But remember, in my opinion, the central banking system, including the Federal Reserve, is a cartel. And it is their job to devalue currency so they can accumulate currency. Remember the four crooks who started the Federal Reserve at Jekyll Island: Paul Warburg, the Rothschild family, J.P. Morgan, and the Rockefellers. Do you think any one of those have the average American's best interest when they created this and with the things that have happened with the Federal Reserve? They're so far off a mandate that Ron Paul was right. You should either end the Fed or at least have a true audit of outside forensic accountants to come in there and see what's really going on.
You think that at least the audit, do you think that will ever happen?
No, no. Well, if they audited them, they'd have to come and fess up. I mean, listen, let's be honest. In 2008, they should have let all the banks go under and bail out the depositors. A true capitalistic system is the weak go out of business and somebody new comes in and takes their place and the strong get stronger. That's the way it should run, not the way that you run under a Keynesian economy. Okay, and I'm not saying Austrian or any other economic systems are the ultimate, but certainly the bottom line in business, if you are struggling, you can't make it, you should go out of business. And the banks that were struggling should go out of business. Bail out the depositors, not the banks, because we, the American taxpayer, are tired of funding companies like AIG, the banks, General Motors. Why should my tax dollars go to those idiots? If they couldn't stay in business and figure it out and they took too much risk, why should we as the citizens have to pay for that risk?
Yeah, it's a great point because I remember during the pandemic, we saw the Fed intervene. We saw zombie companies, on life support. They didn't necessarily fail, but the Fed kept them alive. But what seems to look like it is failing is the monetary system that we have today. I mean, do you see it going away and evolving into that central bank digital currency?
If they do that would be the end of everything. Okay, they go to a full digital currency that's controlled by the Federal Reserve. Okay, or controlled by the central banking system. Your freedom's over because every dime you spend everywhere is known. Okay, we need, and I think that it's important for people to understand that. Listen, I'm not the gold bug or the silver bug. Buy. But I think everybody should have some physical gold and physical silver. And again, I'm not a don't buy paper because I don't believe there's enough paper in the world to cover the amount of gold and silver that's been sold. You need to buy real gold and silver because there's a real good chance that the monetary system could collapse and you might need gold and silver to buy goods and services. Because I think you can see, first of all, gold is obviously skyrocketing higher, as is silver, although it's not, and silver's not anywhere near as high yet, but someday it may get there. But when you see people are starting to recognize Costco selling gold bars, every time they bring them in, they sell them out. I'm telling you that this is a real problem. The cartel, the monetary system is a joke because no currency has any backing. So they can do their own little bit of fancy accounting and devalue currency, which is why the money supply is so huge because the dollar is worth nothing.
It's another great point. The BRICS currencies, they're talking about bringing in that unit. I think it's 40% gold backing. When that does come, if it comes, when it comes, what do you see the impact being on a fiat US dollar?
Well, I think as long as the U.S. holds, U.S. holds a lot of cards for now. Okay, number one, they're in so much debt that the old story, right? If you owe a bank 5,000, they own you. If you own 5 million, you own them. And I think that the rest of the world is in that position because of course our bonds are worthless as well. But China, a big bondholder, so all that debt could get devalued if they force the dollar to not be the reserve currency. So again, this is not something that's going to happen. We've been having this conversation, or I've had this conversation for 20 years now, that the dollar is not going to be the reserve currency. And I think that's a bunch of nonsense because right now we are still, as much as I just to test what's going on in this country, and I have concern, we're still the strongest nation in the world.
Getting back to gold and silver, precious metals, ownership, having some gold and silver, is this more about having it as an investment or is it about maybe it being an insurance or is it something else in your view?
Well, I think it's always good as an investment. I think that every portfolio that's out there should have, 5 to 10 to 15% representation of physical metals. Again, I'm going back. I don't want paper. I want physical. I want hard assets, and I want to put them in. I want to touch them. I want to feel them. I think that A, they're a good investment. They've shown that they go up year over year. Okay. B, they may be needed as a currency. So again, if things go the way they could go, and we've seen this in the past in many major empires, if dollars become worthless, how are you going to buy groceries? How are you going to buy food? How are you going to eat? How are you going to live? And that's why I think that is also a bearing because it is a hedge against inflation. And I give you one quick example. I don't think you're old enough, but in 1964, we stopped making silver, right? In 1964, one silver quarter would buy 1 gallon of gas. Okay, actually a little bit more. Gas was 19.9. Okay, one quarter. One quarter today is worth about $8, so it would buy about a gallon and a half or 2 gallons worth of gas right now. So you can see what's happened by the system and by the devaluation of currency of where we are now. Because again, if I can take the silver back in those days and what it's worth now, then I have no inflation to deal with.
Yeah, I do remember. I tell this story all the time. When I was a kid, my mom, she would dump out the piggy bank, and we would go through the coins looking for the 64 and earlier coins that were 90% silver. So Yeah, I do remember it. Do remember it a bit. But Todd, how does an investor, let's say, invest in markets that are being consolidated in some ways, that are being influenced by the Fed, by the government, even by organizations that may have some agendas behind it?
Well, here you have to use statistical analysis, right? You just have to say the stock market has gone up 8.5% year over year in the history of the market. Okay. Good companies are good
Yeah.
companies. At the end of the day, you have to allow the system to work. Okay. And we don't get that. And that's where these banks and these dollars and everything going on does not work. And the system does not work. And this becomes the much bigger problem. And this is how you destroy a capitalistic system, which they've done a hell of a job. They've already tried to eliminate our First Amendment rights. They're trying to get rid of our Second Amendment rights. And of course, this is a very bad scene for an American.
Yeah, completely agree with that. I mean, we're outside the US, we're watching. I mean, we're really watching what's happening. The loss of stableness, I guess, it's really starting to worry a lot of us out here outside of the US anyway. But Todd, in a nutshell, we have the government, we have the Fed, we have mainstream media all favoring the markets, telling us things are okay, things are good. But what is gold telling us with continual all-time highs, and what are central banks truly telling us where they are increasing their gold reserves?
A higher gold tells you inflation is going higher. Okay. The demand for gold is higher. The demand for hard assets. People use it. Some people believe that using it hedging their equities, which is not the proper way to hedge your equities. There are better ways to do that. But again, it is good to have a representation of hard assets. And again, I'm wondering, and this is always a big question, is there as much gold as we think there is, right? This goes back to the scam of the banks that are pretending because banks lend out at a fractional banking at 10 to 1 supposedly, but there are stories that when they were using gold as a reserve that they were painting gold bars gold. They were just like planting bricks gold so it looked like they had it. So I think that gold is going to continue to rise, and listen, there'll be some pullbacks. We're not going straight up, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we saw 3,000 by the end of the year. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if we saw 36 or $37 in silver by the end of the year. I think they are in demand, and I think a lot will depend how this election plays out, because I think that if Kamala Harris wins, I believe that the economy will tank. I do believe that gold and silver will rise. Okay, and if Trump wins, I think gold and silver are still going to go higher, but I don't think they'll go up as fast as they are going up right now.
Alrighty, Todd, Bubba, Horwitz, this was a treat with no tricks, and I'm sure the good people out there would like to know how they can follow you or contact you and learn more about your opinions and services.
Sure, they can reach me at bubbatrading.com, or they can email. You can email me directly if you have questions. Bubba at bubbatrading.com. And Patrick, I'd like, if you don't mind, I've written a couple of books. I'd like to give away a PDF file to your listeners if you don't mind.
Sure, I don't mind. I don't think they will either.
All right. All you have to do, I've written two books on options, which is where I started in 1980. But if you'd like to get those two books, you can email me at bubbatrading.com, and I will send you a PDF file as my gift because I love being on Patrick's show, and it was a great time to be here.
All right, I'll make sure they get the message. Thanks for the kind words, and I loved having you on. And if you don't mind, I'd like to get you on more often.
Anytime you want. You're a great host, and I'd always like to come back. Anytime you want me, let me know.
Thanks, I really do appreciate it.
Thanks, Patrick.
That was Todd Bubba Horwitz sharing his views on precious metals and the economy. To see more of Bubba's views and work, please go to bubbatrading.com. If you like this video, please do subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and share. All are greatly appreciated. Audio-only versions of this interview can be found on iTunes and Spotify.